Yo, 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 yo. What is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN. Have you ever had a situation where you were picked last for a team? Or maybe worse than that, not picked at all, and then you just got the pity autofill assignment to an existing team? How did that make you feel? What was going through your mind? What was that process like? That is what we're going to be shedding some light on and talking about today, specifically with Kingdom 409, KRM, and them getting put into the probably dreaded KvK that BTX, War, EXP, ABK, SWNS, EVA, and them, KRM, are in. And so we're going to read you some screenshots that were shared with me from an alliance mail. I'm going to show you those up-to-date numbers that I promised you last time on what the KvK group looks like now. And that's specifically because it is now turned into a 1v3 from the starting zones. So as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. Thank you. Okay. So let's start off by showing you the numbers. And then we're going to look at the alliance mail, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts on the whole situation. Okay. So taking a look now, this is what the updated numbers look like. We have two people, right? So I guess two kingdoms in this case, right? You got BTX War, I think it was. So they're here top left, northeast, in the blue, and they're going to be doing a 1v3 in this KvK. Now, you may recall the numbers when we talked about it before, when it was just the basically 2v2 zone. It was still pretty decently favored. Like there was a pretty decent advantage, right? A more than well off advantage on the BTX camp side. And so it was told to me that now they're opting to do this 1v3, even though the numbers, they're not that bad, shockingly. Like it power wise, absolutely. The other side has double their power. They have 3 billion more merits. They have, however, the merit per power activity is actually 2.26% plus in favor of the BTX War side. They're pretty darn close in kills. There's only a 23.75 differential here. That's in favor of the EXP group. The deads, it's about double, right? So it's 266.4 million. That's in favor of the EXP side. Then you got 67.7 billion, again, almost double heals. That's in favor of the EXP side. When we look at the kill to heal ratio, again, they're 0.47 in favor of BTX War. And now let's look at some of the 60 mil plus T5 numbers and then the 100 mil plus. Basically, the big ones we want to look at are these. So total, that's 60 mil and above, and then 100 mil. So there's almost double 60 mil plus players that are on the EXP side. However, there's 54 more 100 mil plus players on the BTX War side. What we often talk about is we want one side to have more power, more 60 mil plus players, and the other side having more 100 mil plus players. We're basically getting that here. However, what I think probably the big determining parts are going to be is how much is too much on power and how much is too much on total T5s or 60 mil plus players. Personally, I think the 42.25 billion might be a little steep. I also think 233 more 60 mils when you're looking at 54 more 100 might be a little bit too much. However, and that doesn't, and I'm not saying that it needs to be half of that, right? But maybe if it was something like 175 or so, right, I might be a little more, or like 150, 175, I might be a little more okay with that. Along with maybe if the power was dropped about 10 bill, maybe 15 bill, right? However, even though I'm saying that at face value from a number perspective, this KvK could turn out to be just the best thing that any of a lot of the recent KvKs have been able to produce for us, because this is the first time, I believe, that we are seeing a top kingdom, which BTX is a top kingdom now, and I'll get to, I may touch on that a little bit later or in a later video. But this where they've opted to now, some of you might remember this when Noor was the number one kingdom and they were clearly a cut above power wise, total T5s, 100 mil plus players, activity, etc. And there was, I think, at least two KvKs where there was an opportunity, at least one, for them to basically do a 1v all, essentially do what BTX is doing, which is, okay, hey, we're going to take our zone and we'll fight against all the other zones. However, that never happened. And I don't mean solo, right? It could have been them and whoever else was in the zone. So to me, though this has not happened that much, and I can't even recall, maybe, and I'm talking in a situation where you're putting A's and B's in there, right? I'm not talking like C's and D's. And so to me, this could be extremely exciting. And I am very much going to be looking forward to watching this because this is going to be what we often have seen other kingdoms and alliances refer to as stress tests, where they're going to be able to really see how many people, because this is the thing, dude, if you're BTX in your war, you're going to get arguably all the PvP you want. Like this is almost, this could be, again, as long as the other side fights, this could be the perfect storm for them, right? Even if they lose every zone, they could arguably fight for days potentially in every zone, even if they lose and get their PvP fill. Isn't that kind of the whole point of what we want to see and what I would imagine players would like to have that type of KvK experience? So anyways, let's get to the mails now. So this is the first one. We have and again, this is coming from KRM and 409. As many of you have noticed, we have begun the process of entering SOS 3. Currently, matchmaking is underway. You've also noticed a key piece of information: we're alone. Now, they were not the only ones alone, right? There was a handful of other kingdoms that were alone as well. How did this happen? Well, the game matched us with a lot of servers who were far beyond our strength, power-wise. Aside from one server who was at 6.3 billion power, the rest of the servers in our bracket were between 10.6 and 23.9. Now, for context, on the data that Fuzzy had pulled for me on the 26th of January, it shows them at 8.1 billion power for their top 300. The latest pool on the 26th shows them at about 8.9, right? So on the 26th, they were the 155th ranked kingdom. They are now the 147th ranked kingdom. So they moved up about 8 spots. But just to give you some power numbers, right, for where they were at, I think they had about 1.14 billion merits. They had about 10.5 billion kills, almost 36 million deads, and about 10.3 billion heals. At the time. They also did not have any players in that kingdom above 125 mil. They only had 2 players between 100 and 125 million power. Just to give some more context. So sadly, other servers had little interest in allying with us, and our attempts to form alliances were mostly ignored. In the end, the servers who were left without alliances decided to allow the game to match them, which means we were left to do the same. TLDR, the game screwed us with matchmaking. So, just interesting. Okay, next. Part 2. Currently, we are expecting one of two things to happen. The game will either automatically find our allies and opponents for us, or we'll end up in a draw skip. Who do we think the game will match us with? Is most likely that we will be, and keep in mind, I said this too as well when I did the KvK pool preview for Gen 3, and I talked about how it's probably likely that 409 is going to get paired with BTX and maybe the other Paragon too as well. They say it's most likely that we will be allied with either 99 BTX, who has 23.9 billion total power, or 140, or Kingdom 140, which is NN, who has 19.5 billion power. If we end up with BTX, it will probably be an easy win, but it will sadly be a mostly farm season. The alternative will be facing them, and it will be horrible. Nothing we can do about this. The last part. What happens if we draw skip? We will then have to wait in home kingdom longer and wait for the game to have us re-enter the matchmaking process. We anticipate the wait in home kingdom to be extended by another 14 days at least. TLDR, our season will either be Farmville, horrible, opponents too strong, or it'll force skip and we'll be in home kingdom for another 14 days at least. Now, we obviously know that is not the current situation. The current situation could arguably be stated as a glorious, like if you're just looking at it in the best light, this could be a glorious, magnificent season, which is probably something that based on this mail, keep in mind, this mail was sent on the 26th. So we're talking about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I don't think probably anyone, or at least this kingdom, could have anticipated the situation playing out the way it is now. However, I want to say that from their perspective at the time, I would tend to agree. If you look at the current mechanics for the KvK season, the understanding is that you have the opportunity to skip. And that's if you don't register, right? So if we look at the Gen 3 situation, right, and we look at the kingdoms that did not register, keep in mind, this was not a situation where they did not register, right? They registered for Dragonfall. They just happened to not get any pairings in Dragonfall, right? There wasn't a team that they were able to form with. If they didn't register, then obviously they would have skipped. Now, we've seen this in Gen 2 where people registered, but they still got put into the, they did register, but again, they did not find a team. They essentially got force matched. So we know this is something that happened. Now, they may not have known this at the time. And so it's, I guess where I land on this in somewhat of a conclusion here for me is it must suck to feel like based on the matchup you're getting, that the players in that kingdom are going to feel disappointed. They're going to be demotivated. They're not going to be as engaged and probably enjoying the game that much, especially when you get a mail like this and you don't really know, and you're just thinking, okay, this is just set in stone. Like my leadership laid out at the time what was arguably probably just the three options that really were most likely going to happen. And I then think about the video we did before where we talked about the fact that we just need two things to happen. One, we need a larger KvK kingdom pool, meaning we need to merge Gen 1 and Gen 2. It just needs to happen. And then eventually they need to work in Gen 3. Number two, they need to only have one KvK storyline per season. However, as I mentioned before, the asterisk here is once you get to Season of Strife, then you can rotate KvKs, right? Don't give multiple options. Basically, what that means is that if they're doing Dragonfall now, and then you're in a kingdom that is maybe in pre-Strife, and you're going to Season of Strife, but you have to wait for that Dragonfall KvK season in SOS to finish, and the next one you do is Winter is Upon Us, and then your kingdom would get put into Winter is Upon Us, right? So it's whatever the current season, whatever the current storyline is, but you rotate the storyline in Season of Strife. The reason why is because if you only have one storyline / one map variation in the KvK season, everyone has to play that. What it means is that you're not going to give kingdoms this opportunity to register for other KvK storylines, which only reduces the kingdom pool, meaning it reduces the amount of fair and balanced matchups that you could get based on teams being formed and then those teams going through the matchmaking process to see who they're going to match with. That's what just I feel needs to happen if we want to get to a point where you're having more balanced and fair KvK matchups and you're not getting situations like this. Because I'll tell you right now, if I was a developer and I saw a mail like this in the kingdom, which basically was deflating the amount of money that I could potentially be making off of a KvK, and I don't mean to like come off, financially aggressive in this sense, but if you're a developer, you want, and also you could be losing players, right? I mean, who's to say that at least one or a few people may not have quit? That could have happened. But definitely you're thinking about lower spending capacities and levels that would happen because of a mail like this being, and I'm not saying like this is a bad mail, I'm just saying this is some of those things when you look at it from a developer's perspective that probably makes a lot more sense to them, right? If you're kind of speaking more of their language, like how does this impact them on their bottom line or on their back end? So, yeah, you don't want things like this to be sent out, then yeah, you have to merge the KvK groups, right? You got to make it so there's just one storyline to choose from, and then you just rotate the storyline. I don't see anything wrong with that. It also gives you an opportunity to test out other storylines too as well, at least until season 3 comes out. So those are my thoughts on it. I want to say that in final, I am glad that the KvK is not going to play out the way that probably a lot of people thought, and the fact that BTX and War, and probably maybe more so BTX, but I'm sure War is at this point, they're like, all right, well, F it, it's already happening. The fact that BTX really went out on a limb and are gonna probably, and again, I imagine there's gonna be a lot of eyes on this KvK, because the only thing that to me would really not, that would deflate the hype around this KvK, which I'm excited for. I can't wait to watch this. The only thing that would really demotivate and just lose all the wind in the sails for me is if either side just didn't show up. Like, I don't like, if BTX is going to show up and War is going to show up and they're going to go hard, I don't think there's any reason on why the other side wouldn't go as equally hard, right? Like, this is one of those situations where on the BTX side, they're probably thinking, dude, if we go hard, we might actually have a shot at winning. And the other side is probably thinking, dude, we're going to farm BTX so much in the field, and even though the numbers look really good, we still have to show up if we want to farm. Like, if we want a shot at like really, like, I mean, it is very interesting, because you might think of BTX and War now as kind of underdogs, but like, does the other side view them as underdogs? Do they view them as like, oh, dude, we're going to farm them all? Or is it like, nah, man, we got to show up because they might just be like, they might go all in. Like, we really need to, kind of have all our ducks in a row, our I's dotted and our T's crossed. So regardless of what happens, I'm excited for the season. So, and I would hope that maybe the KRM group and 409 is probably excited now too as well. But yeah, so all in all, I'm happy things didn't turn out the way that it looked back on the 26th. But I can only imagine how that must have felt for that kingdom, that alliance, and those players and their management team at the time. I'd love to know from you. Have you felt that way? If you're someone who's in a kingdom, regardless if you're a player, officer, leader, and you were going into a KvK and you just felt similarly to how KRM 409 felt about the matchup and the teams that you got put on, the matchup that you found yourself in, did you feel like, based on maybe how the numbers looked or what was being talked about, was there anything that came up that just made you feel like, oh man, this KvK could really suck? Like, maybe I'm not going to participate. Maybe I'm not going to spend that amount of money. Or, man, I really wish we had more kingdoms in our pool because this matchup isn't as fair as it could have been. Like, I would really love to know how you felt about a situation you were in. Let me know in the comments below. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.